Part 3. The Iconoclast. The iconoclastic impulse is the curiosity which drives the philosophical subject towards the meta-question. Essentially, due to the ungrounded nature of the meta-question, this is an attempt to initialize cognition nihilistically and without presumptive axioms. This is an act of transgression against all assertive pretenses, theistic or atheistic. The iconoclast's eyes first appear brimming with madness as they wander the fog of the philosophical Leviathan. Their exploratory task grows more unwieldy with each approach. Linear lines are traversed, and from them emerge new dimensions, growing into unforeseen perspectives. The endeavour of iconoclasm is essentially, for the human animal, a tragic one. The ultimate futility of philosophy is found in iconoclastic praxis. In regards to this, I want to question the very ability to sincerely philosophize, considering the capabilities of the embodied human subject. The iconoclast would be of such a mind to question the impetus and worth of their task. An intellect without presumption is bound to the inevitability of madness. As the philosophical subject tires, the meta-question blurs into cryptic logics, becoming increasingly unreasonable. Like the heads of a hydra, each bout of questioning, resolved or otherwise, raises several others in its place. Anyone who has experienced sincere philosophy understands the requirement for poetic language and metaphor. The iconoclast acts with an impulse. They are helpless to their characteristic embodiment of the intellectual archetype. A reflexive explosion in multi-directional meta-exploration is thrust on the rare iconoclastic subject as a fateful torment. Starting with a curious peek through the lens of philosophy, the iconoclast pupils enlarge to fill the whites of their eyes, and they are drawn into the blinding light of the meta-question. The iconoclastic impulse, when ignited, is thrust outwards from all unidimensional sub-questions into the unpolarized meta-question. The iconoclast. 1. Intellectually engaged in the unbounded meta-question. An iconoclast has no intellectual allergies. 2. Engages cognitively with an epistemic uncertainty. This state is known as suspense of judgment. The result is a creative destruction of the inherently judging perspective of the bounded human context. 3. Employs intellectually critical acts which erode the foundational axioms of sub-questions, either steadily over time or in bursts of intense iconoclasm. The integrity of its sub-question is challenged, causing decline through defection or complete collapse. In a transcendence of more base archetypes, the iconoclastic impulse often leads to an explosion of purpose found through the meaning of cognition. This is why the iconoclast is not only feared as an agent of destruction, but also emerges as a prophetic figure, either at the start or the end of dogmatic epochs. A herald of the cyclical reset, ready to point out the rotting corpse of God. This temporal nature of the iconoclast's emergence is in direct opposition to the dogmatic urge, which fills the hopeful middle stage. The iconoclast is the progenitor to things through artistic re-evaluation, against prescription, and the terminator of inquiry when it staggers in calcification. The iconoclast seeks no shelter, ripping sanctity from foundations to expose stagnation underneath, much to the distraught eyes of naive bystanders. In comparison to the temporality of the dogmatist, the iconoclast refuses to acknowledge the primacy of time, let alone a linear sense of it. Every event is substantively incidental when judgment is suspended and has no deterministic progression. The untimely nature of the iconoclastic impulse is why iconoclastic action often seems like a possessed madness or mindless destruction. Within the zeitgeist, the iconoclast is only ever seen as a necessity upon post hoc reflection. This puts the iconoclast outside of time, an explanation as to why skeptics live lives of niche and solitude. The iconoclast is naturally inclined to the great beyond of unbounded thought. Dogmatic thinking, however, is a prey upon the social nature of man. Every orientation of an ideal, every set of rules, every sub-question is ultimately a safe haven by virtue of human company. Nothing is more unsettling than a man by himself. Once the iconoclastic impulse takes hold, the social immune system sends agents of dogmatic thinking to neutralize the threat and protect the viral integrity of the sub-question. The iconoclastic endeavor is a singular one. As one becomes indecipherable, one becomes unbearable. As one descends into pure cognition, one becomes a prisoner of their own intellect. The worst part of being both prisoner and guard in your own head is that there are no secrets. Man cannot stand to be by himself for too long. This is why solitary confinement is humanity's greatest punishment. However, when we are solitary, we aren't really alone. We have our own perpetual cognition to keep us company. Cognition is an inevitable process with no certain metaphysical end. This constitutes both the terror and retribution of the notion of the soul. Even in sleep, the brain runs hot. Constantly, our conscience traps our psyche in criticism and worry. The greatest and most damning critique a man can know is from himself. This explains not only why the instances of the intellectual iconoclast are rare, but also explains why the throes of the iconoclastic impulse only take hold for intense bursts of time. The iconoclast's ultimate fate is either to become truly lost or to retreat back to the cathedrals of the sub-questions. The tragedy of the iconoclast is that they seek an unattainable goal, or rather, it would be a tragedy if it wasn't so fun to lose yourself.